Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we're going to explore part 2 of our series with Dr. Charles Tramont on his journey from medicine to metaphysics. Dr. Tramont is a former director of surgery at a hospital in Ohio, where he used to live, before he moved to Las Vegas, where I've known him now for 16 years. He is currently a hypnotherapist. He is the author of several books, including From Birth to Rebirth and What's Missing in Medicine. Welcome again, Chuck.
Thank you again, Jeffrey.
I would encourage our viewers who, if they haven't watched part 1 of this 2-part series, that they take a look at part 1, because we covered a lot of ground.
I know. Jumped around.
We've really been talking about a journey that you took from being a flight surgeon working with the Air Force to becoming, in effect, an exorcist.
Well, it's very interesting, but I jumped around, and when I got to this hypnosis and past life regression stuff, I could see a lot of therapeutic value in that. And it blew my mind when I ran into entities, and that was that case of Jason where he had an earthbound spirit attached to him, and I had regressed the spirit instead of him. But after doing a lot of research, I learned an awful lot about these entities. And I discussed the dark forces in fair detail earlier. The next group is a human group called Earthbound Spirits. As I told you, they decline going to the light for various reasons. But they can cause a lot of problems for the patient. And I found some interesting things happen in terms of homosexuality. I had 2 lesbian patients over a year's time. And they were both in their 20s, and each one of them amazingly had an earthbound spirit attached to them, one when she was 2 years old and the other one when she was 3 years old. I get all this information. It's really interesting. And the individuals that attached, the one with attached to her 2-year-old, he was an 18-year-old guy who was killed somehow. And I interviewed him, and the answers come right through the patient, but I interviewed him and I said, what was your purpose in joining her? And he said, to have fun with her. And when I got to the other one, the guy was 22 when he died, and joined her at this, 3 years old, and I asked him, what's your purpose? And he said, this one said fun with her, this one said have fun through her. And I feel that those are the reasons that these gals were looking towards other gals and becoming homosexual. And then I had a patient a young woman who had male life. She had about 6 male lives in a row, and now she's a female. And I think that's a good reason too, because we are kind of like the sum total of all our previous personalities. If she had all those personalities all ahead of her recently, then I think that really influenced her, so she's still got to think about women. At any rate, then there's the medical community came up with this foreign accent syndrome. Patient goes under anesthesia and wakes up speaking a foreign accent. And there's a whole bunch of these different accents.
Well, you've conducted many surgeries. Have you witnessed this?
No, that's very rare. I think they said it was only 60 cases. That was years ago that I read that.
Yeah.
But they said it's probably a brain injury, and I say, I'm sorry, I think it's an earthbound spirit. And then I've had a lot of patients who've had miscarriages, and I remember some of them, and at that time I didn't know this, but at that time I'd see them a week or 2 after and stuff, and they had kind of an irrational fear of things that didn't make sense. now it makes sense, because I would say it's probably a fetal earthbound spirit that attached them. And the fetuses, I've had these little things, little babies in your hand after they abort, and they're moving and making little noises, and God, it's so heartbreaking. But they're probably very fearful, and if they join, they probably can transmit that fear to the mother.
I see.
But anyway, that makes a lot of sense. But at any rate, the earthbound spirits are very interesting. Then there's another human form called soul fragments, and it's when a person has a very emotional or physical trauma occur, part of their soul may fragment, and that fragment may leave and not return, and many times goes into the lower astral plane, just like the earthbound spirits do, and finds somebody and attach to them.
A fragment of a soul.
A fragment of a soul.
Well, I know the Egyptians have, for example, 10 different words for different aspects of the soul. I don't know that an aspect and a fragment are quite the same.
Well, what they're saying is that there's a portion of that soul that attaches. So what we
when
do
you say
is,
what they're saying, who is they?
wait a minute. Well, let me say, the soul fragment leaves and attaches to people, and what we do is we remove that fragment. And the way I do it is I tell them, look for a silver thread that leads away, the silver thread that leads away from you, and follow that thread to your original soul.
Okay.
And when they get there, the soul welcomes and embraces the fragment, gives it a gift of love and security, and the fragment is given gives a gift to the soul too, of lightheartedness.
And this is all reported back to you under hypnosis.
And this is called the soul retrieval. Yeah, I'm doing all this under hypnosis. Then I ask, after I get all the fragments taken care of and they're gone, I ask the spirit guide, is this patient that I'm working on been fragmented too?
Yeah.
Yes, several times. So then we do another retrieval, but it's a little different. I ask them to look for silver threads that lead from you, if you see a larger one, follow that and re-experience the trauma that went with that fragmentation. And if it happened when you were very young, the subpersonality needs to know that it survived, kind of thing. And then follow each, just grab each silver thread that you see and pull each one towards you. And when it gets back, you exchange the same gifts. You give the love and security and receive the lightheartedness. And when it's all completed, the soul retrieval is complete, and the soul is now complete. And when you're a complete soul, you're not vulnerable anymore to entity infestation. But when you're fragmented, you're very vulnerable. That's why they end up getting dark forces and earthbounds and everything else. So if you're traumatized and you've got fragmentation occurring, you're just in trouble. There's several things that increase your vulnerability. And one is if you're under general anesthesia. One is if you're fragmented. One is if you're using really very deep emotional negative phrases, like, if you're enraged, that kind of thing.
You're susceptible to being
you're opening yourself to
invaded by
that's right, yeah,
earthbound spirits that are looking for a home.
That's right. Or anything. Okay, and that's the fragments. And then the last is another non-human, kind of like dark forces were non-human. Well, now we're talking extraterrestrials. They're non-human. And I've had many patients who've been abducted, but I've also run into extraterrestrials who are looking to explore and do research, and they come in and they put implants in people, and they may leave those implants and leave, or they may come back. But usually only one extraterrestrial attaches, and the others kind of hover and keep an eye on things. If I find one that's doing some kind of an experimental thing or whatever, I'll talk to them. If they are very hostile, I know they have dark forces, and then we'll do
the extraterrestrials can be infested with dark forces.
And then I'll have spirit guide confirm it, get rid of them, and all stuff. Then they're much more amenable and cooperative to leaving and taking their implants and going. Then you've got benevolent ones who hover over you, and they're usually from a planet that you've just started your Earth life because you were on that planet before. So you came from that planet to Earth. And they will send a group and hover over you and kind of protect you. And that's so the spirit guide would usually say, leave them, they're fine, they're there for protection.
Okay. And your approach, if I understand it correctly, is basically when you get this information coming through your patients under hypnosis, unless you think that they are under the control of a dark force who's lying to you, you'll take that information at face value.
The spirit guides, I can usually tell if they're legit. And use your intuition too. And they're extremely helpful. They're a tremendous shortcut. I mean, they answer all these questions. And instead of going through a long, drawn-out situation to get to a past life, I can just ask them, is there a past life that contributed to the patient's whatever, anxiety, depression, you name it? Yes, 2. Okay, let's go back to the first on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, boom, we're right there.
Well, you give me the impression, and I think you would agree, that you're 100% convinced. You don't have any doubts in your mind about this worldview. And I would imagine that in order to do the work that you do, that level of 100% belief is essential.
Well, you know where it comes from.
Tell me.
100% cures. I mean, I have people that are so happy. I have people singing all the way home, they said. And it lasts for long periods of time. Let's see. Let me just one more extraterrestrial, just to cover that, is the demonic reptilians. And they're more demonic than the powerful dark forces. I don't screw around with them. I just do an exorcism, get rid of them. But the whole idea here is I give them protection to maintain the fact that they will have no foreign energy, okay? And I give them 2 things. One I borrowed from Dr. Baldwin. He called it ceiling light meditation. I call it God light visualization. I tell them, picture yourself in front of you and see that little spark of God light. It's like a golden white, violet, bright light. And see it explode and fill your whole body with this beautiful God light and surrounds you with a protective shield. And do it upon waking in the morning, before each meal, and before you go to bed. It takes a few seconds. And then I give them an affirmation I picked up from a very sharp guy many years ago. It's 3 phrases, and the first 2 phrases are repeated 3 times, the last phrase once. First phrase is, the light of God never fails. Second phrase, 3 times. Next phrase is, I live this day in God light. Last phrase, the harmony of my true being is my ultimate protection. And I know it works because I've had patients loaded with all kinds of stuff come back 2-3 years later. And if they were consistent doing their protections, still no foreign energy. Others that didn't do it very well or didn't do it at all loaded again. So I have a pretty good idea it works.
Has there ever been any independent verification of the effectiveness of this therapy?
Independent verification?
Well, I mean, normally when a therapist comes and says, I'm 100% successful with all of my clients, I would think the therapist has some self-interest in saying that.
Well, yeah, I suppose, but
that's the advantage of having an independent evaluation.
Yeah. Well, I was more interested in just helping people as much as I can. And obviously, the things I'm doing are working, but the spirit guide is such a tremendous shortcut. And ABLE is another added shortcut. And the dual hypnosis is a beautiful shortcut, too.
Let's talk about the dual hypnosis.
Put them all together.
You haven't mentioned dual hypnosis.
Well, okay. The dual hypnosis, I did mention.
Oh, yes, with the mother and daughter.
Yes. That's when I first got the whole proof to me it works. And since then, we've done many people after we couldn't get a guide and we couldn't get ABLE. And then we did a dual the following whatever appointment we had. And it worked beautifully. And these people are so happy that they're able to get rid of their particular problems. Now, I was very excited about the fact that we have an answer to all these things. And the guide was unbelievable. And speaking to the guide, and then I find out you got to be careful because it could be dark force pretending, but I would the straight dark forces, if they pretend it's real obvious, but the powerful ones are tricky. And sometimes they can split, and half of them will leave and half of them will still be there. But the spirit guide will know about these things, so that's what screws them up. But I love the fact that we're able to cure these people. And what happens is that the person's subconscious mind is able to show the person's conscious mind that the underlying cause of their problem is curable, and we're able to, by showing, in other words, we're showing that the subconscious lets the conscious mind know that this is the cause of the problem, and by your conscious mind understanding fully that this is the cause of the problem, is able to release the effect. And bingo, these people are cured. And that's if it has to do with that kind of stuff, whether it's entities or the other.
Does it require that your patients enter into this belief system?
Not necessarily. They're just happy to be cured. How much more time do we have in this session?
We have 10 minutes.
Okay. Remember I mentioned to you when we weren't on film here, the karmic monkey wrench?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's an interesting situation. That's what I call the entities. And the reason I call that is they are a karmic monkey wrench that's been thrown into the doctrines of reincarnation and karma. And the doctrines are very simple. You have free will, you're responsible for what you do, you create your own reality, and you can never be a victim. Throw in the entities, the monkey wrench, your free will's interfered with. You may not be responsible for what you're doing, and you may not be creating your own reality, and yeah, you can be a victim. So if you have to consider both of these causes. But the two causes together are pretty much all the causes.
Now, you've used the term the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And I know it's part of the subtitle of your book, What's Missing in Medicine. You refer again to the subconscious mind.
That's right. Yeah, it's unleashing the healing power of the subconscious mind. What happens is the subconscious, if something in your present life triggers a memory from a past life, your subconscious brings that up. And now it's stored in the subconscious. But it programs your conscious mind in a very negative way, and you're suffering, but you have no idea why, until you're shown by the subconscious what the scoop is. And that's where the hypnosis comes in.
Well, would you say that these entities are, in effect, part of the subconscious mind?
No. Why do you say that?
Well, because you brought the term up. I'm just, and
No,
many people who are in your profession, in the medical profession, would say this is all the subconscious mind.
Well, they're involved. Yeah, whatever you want. I mean, that's a lost cause, being able to come up with names for all these different areas and how they interact with each other. But I know that they can program the conscious mind in a very negative way. But once the subconscious is used with its healing power, it can show the conscious mind what the heck the problem is, and that we're able to understand it, make a distinction of time, like, oh man, that happened a long time ago, why am I suffering? And release the effect. That's really good stuff, man. I mean, and I'm trying to give this message out to everybody I can, because before I leave this earth, I'd like other people to be able to be healed, and other guys can do what I do. It can be a retired physician, it could be a nurse, it could be a therapist, it could be anybody.
Well, you're practicing as a retired physician.
Yeah, I guess so.
I have to say, I do know that there are more than one case of licensed psychologists losing their licenses for engaging in this kind of practice, because the behavioral science boards and the medical boards consider it quackery. Yeah.
Well, I consider it a good situation that you're able to heal people who cannot be healed with conventional stuff. And I don't see a problem in that at all. I mean, you're working in their subconscious mind and you're delving into the causes of their problem. And the two causes are past lives or entities. At least that's how I found it. And the entities fooled me because I thought it was all past lives. And then all of a sudden the karmic monkey wrench came in, and it's real stuff. And reincarnation is real. I'm sorry. And that case that I told you about, that was unbelievable. But I've been able to have so many lives that I've seen, and they're unbelievable.
Well, I do know this, and I don't want to harp on it much, but the enormous body of research on reincarnation initiated by Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia and is still ongoing. Thousands of cases are well documented of young children who recall past lives. But these researchers are very, I have to say, frankly, hostile to the whole field of hypnotic regression therapy because they think that it may be a valid form of psychotherapy, but they don't consider it a valid form of reincarnation research.
That's the only way you can do reincarnation research as far as I could see.
Yeah.
I don't buy into that, their story there. That doesn't make sense.
Well, their concern has to do with the possibility that the hypnotherapist is planting suggestions.
No, I get everything from the patient. And it all comes from the patient. So does the spirit guide come from the patient. And under deep hypnosis, it's amazing what you can come up with. And I can take people into future lives too, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, you have a few more minutes here?
Yes, we do.
I got to tell you, well, one of the cases I was going to later on tell you about, but this has to do with my wife, because I've taken her back to about 90 lifetimes.
90?
Oh, yeah. And,
your wife Nancy, who's a good friend of mine.
Oh, yes, but she was a newspaper reporter in the 40s for a Pittsburgh newspaper. And she, as I advanced, it was a he in that life. His name was Edward Johnson, I think. As I advanced him in that life, I said, "Where are you now?" I said, "I'm in New York." I said, "What are you doing in New York?" He said, "I'm watching a very important game." Well, a baseball game. My antenna goes up. And why is it so important? Because the manager, the Brooklyn Dodgers have a new manager this year. What year is it? 1947. And then I learned that, I'm trying to think of the manager that was there.
Leo DeRocher.
And he was there from 39 to 46. And then 48. He wasn't there in 47.
Oh.
And but I didn't know that initially, and I read up and stuff, and it says he was the manager actually for all these years, but in 1947 he was seen with known gamblers and suspended for that year. But you know what's funny? My wife doesn't care about baseball worth a dang. But she has to watch the World Series every year. She doesn't care who's playing, who's winning. She just watches it. And I'm sure it's from that lifetime. I'm telling you, these things, they affect us. It's a riot. And then there was another one, a deja vu that she had in Segovia, Spain.
But why? What was it about that lifetime that would cause her to continue to watch the World Series?
Because she was a sports reporter, and obviously it was a very important thing to Edward Johnson in those years. And he ended up drowning on a ship after, but and she always worries about drowning and stuff, this kind of thing. But she had a deja vu in Segovia, Spain, in the Alcazar, Ferdinand Isabella's courtyard in that castle. And I took her back, and she went back, and mind you, my wife was raised Baptist, and she went back to being a little Spanish girl named Marcela Alvarez, who had visions of the Blessed Mother in that courtyard. The Baptists don't get involved with the Blessed Mother. And it doesn't make any difference. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but it's just amazing how this all stuff works. But I get just a kick out of how all these lives do have an effect on you somewhere, somehow, kind of thing. And some people more than others, obviously. But I think you are the total personality from all these lifetimes that you've had.
Well, I don't know that there's any limit. If the soul is immortal, we may have infinite many past lives.
And remember, the way I understand the whole process of reincarnation is you choose these lifetimes to learn lessons so you can join the Creator again. And the lessons are what make up the whole lifetime. I had a guy get real upset with me. I jumped up in front of my desk and said, "Why would I choose my parents? They molested me." And I said, you know what? You got to step back and look at the big picture. And just maybe one of the lessons you need to learn was forgiveness. And you worked your life around so you could come up with these lessons.
An opportunity to experience forgiveness.
It's a hard concept for a lot of people. It really is. But at any rate.
Well, Dr. Charles Tramont, I can imagine that many of our viewers are going to have a very tough time with this conversation. I do. Myself at times, but I think it's important that people realize there are many different ways of looking at the world. So I want to thank you for sharing your perspective with me.
I just want you to know I've seen a lot of people.
Yeah, I know you
People
have.
from every state in the Union and almost every country. That's crazy, but that's true. It's a big interest.
Thank you for being with me, Chuck.
Well, thank you again, Jeffrey. You're a good guy.
And thank you for being with us.